They say loyalty is earned, not owed, but my truth is that sometimes even the ones you raise with love can turn against you. I'm Margaret, born in 1956 in Hobart, Tasmania. Back in 2021. After I lost the factory job I had worked at for 25 years, my daughter Sophia told me I had outlived my usefulness and should leave the home I helped her build. I felt discarded, like an old piece of furniture no one wanted. But then something happened that changed everything. Today, at 69, sitting quietly in a sunlit apartment overlooking the sea. I'm finally sharing this because silence hides too much pain. If you're listening, drop your city below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so no one else suffers in silence. When I first brought Sophia home from the adoption center, she was barely 6 months old. I was 31, single, and determined to give her every chance in life. I gave up painting, my one true passion, because I needed steady income, and I took the first factory job that would keep a roof over our heads. My hands grew rough, my back ached from standing long shifts, but every cent I earned went into building a future for her. School uniforms, violin lessons, summer camps, I made sure she had it all. People told me, "You spoil her too much," but I couldn't help it. She was the only family I had. The day I lost my job, I walked home in a fog of shame. I had been called into the manager's office, handed a thin envelope, and told that the plant was shutting down. 25 years gone with one handshake. My biggest worry wasn't even myself. It was how I would continue to support Sophia and her family. Her husband, Adrian, never held a steady job. He loved to dress well, spend on gadgets, and throw parties that I often funded without complaint. I thought they loved me for who I was, but I was about to learn the truth. That evening, I told Sophia the news over dinner. Her fork clattered onto her plate. "Mom, how could you let this happen? What are we supposed to do now?" Her words cut deeper than any layoff notice ever could. I tried to explain that I'd saved some money and could still manage for a while, but she wasn't listening. Adrian chimed in with a sneer, "Well, if she's not working, she's just another mouth to feed. Maybe it's time she moved into one of those government homes." My chest tightened, but I stayed calm. "Sophia, I've always been here for you. I helped pay for this house, your university fees, your wedding. Surely we can figure this out together." Her eyes were cold, unfamiliar. That was then. Things are different now. You can't just sit around expecting us to cover for you. If you're not earning, you're a burden. It was like a blade driven into my heart. All those years of sacrifice, and this was how she saw me. A burden, not a mother. Not a woman who had bled and sweated for her, but dead weight dragging her shiny new life down. The following weeks were a nightmare. The tension in the house grew unbearable. Sophia stopped speaking to me except to bark orders: "Clean this, cook that, babysit her children," so she could go out with friends. Adrian left bills on the counter with notes scribbled, "Your share." I wanted to scream that the mortgage existed only because of me, that without my contribution, they'd still be renting a small flat. But I bit my tongue. I told myself maybe they were just stressed, maybe time would soften them. Then came the day they made their final decision. Sophia stood in the doorway of my room, arms crossed. "Mom, we've discussed it. You can't stay here anymore. It's better for everyone if you move into assisted living. You'll have your own space, and we'll visit sometimes." I felt my knees weaken. "You're throwing me out of the home I helped pay for." "It's not about throwing you out," she said flatly. "It's about being practical. You need to stop clinging to the past." Her children, my grandchildren, played in the living room, their laughter ringing like a cruel echo of the joy I once imagined this family would bring me. I packed my few belongings into 2 suitcases that night. No one helped me. Sophia avoided my eyes. Adrian pretended to be busy on his phone. I wheeled those bags out the door myself. Every step a reminder that love, if conditional, is no love at all. I spent a few weeks in a small rented room above a bakery, surviving on meager savings and endless cups of tea. The walls smelled of yeast and sugar, but to me they reeked of abandonment. I would sit by the window and wonder how the daughter I raised with so much love could turn me into an exile. I replayed every sacrifice: late nights working double shifts, weekends selling crafts at markets, evenings skipping dinner so she could have extra. What had it all been for? Yet, beneath the ache, something inside me hardened. I realized I had given Sophia everything too much, perhaps, and in return, she had learned entitlement instead of gratitude. It dawned on me that I had to stop begging for her love. I needed to stand up for myself, even if I had to do it alone. What Sophia and Adrian never knew was that I wasn't as powerless as they believed. There was a secret I had kept locked away, one that would change everything once I decided to use it. The betrayal lit a fire in me. I stopped crying into my pillow and started sketching again, filling old notebooks with charcoal drawings of faces twisted in greed, of hands clutching coins, of mothers weeping alone. Every stroke reminded me of who I once was before the factory swallowed my life. Art had always been my sanctuary, and now it became my weapon. I avoided Sophia's calls when she finally began to reach out, usually when bills piled up or she needed babysitting again. Each missed call gave me strength. I wasn't ready to reveal anything yet, not my plans, not my resources, not the inheritance that had quietly changed my life months before I even lost my job. She thought she had stripped me bare, but she had only forced me to see my own worth. What I didn't know then was just how far Sophia would go once she realized I would no longer be her silent bank account. And what she could never imagine was that I, the mother she cast aside, held the kind of power that would not only free me but expose her to the entire world. When I walked away from Sophia's house with my suitcases rattling behind me, she thought I was beaten. What she never knew was that 6 months earlier, before I ever lost my job, I had received a letter that turned my entire world upside down. It came in a cream envelope sealed with wax. The kind of letter you don't see anymore. Inside was news that my old art teacher, Mrs. Lindholm, had passed away and left me her estate. $10 million. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, trembling as I read it again and again, unable to believe that someone had remembered me so deeply. Mrs. Lindholm had always told me, "Margaret, your hands were born for creation, not machines." I never believed her back then, but she saw something in me I had buried. In her will, she wrote that she had followed my life quietly through mutual friends. Heartbroken that I had abandoned painting but admiring the sacrifices I made as a mother. She wanted me to live the life I had once dreamed of. She left me everything, her properties, her investments, her savings. I swore I would keep it a secret because money changes people. I was right. After Sophia cast me out, I decided it was time to use the inheritance not as a weapon of revenge but as a shield of independence. The first thing I did was buy myself a townhouse by the waterfront in Melbourne. The place was sunlit, quiet, filled with glass walls that looked out onto rippling waves. When I moved in, I felt like I had shed the skin of an old life. For the first time, I breathed freely. No orders, no guilt. Just me. But freedom is never that simple. One afternoon, Sophia showed up at my door. She must have followed me or found out my address through someone, because I had never told her. She stepped inside without waiting for permission, her eyes darting round the luxurious space. "Mum," she said, her voice tight, "how on earth can you afford this? You don't even have a job." I sipped my tea slowly, refusing to let her see my nerves. "That's my business, Sophia. I'm not living off anyone anymore. That should be enough for you." Her face twisted in disbelief. "You've been hiding money all this time while we struggled. While Adrian and I had to scrape together bills. You're selfish." I nearly laughed at the irony. "Selfish? After everything I've given you, you dare call me that?" She stormed out that day, but I knew it wasn't the end. Weeks later, I started seeing posts about me on social media. Sophia had begun painting herself as the abandoned daughter. She went live, sobbing into the camera, claiming her ungrateful adoptive mother had left her to fend for herself after losing her job, that I had chosen luxury over family, that I had heartlessly turned my back on my grandchildren. She showed old photos of us together, weaving a story that made her look like a victim and me like a monster. Thousands of strangers sympathized with her. How could a mother be so cruel? They commented. At first, I ignored it. But then neighbors began whispering, and people at the bakery where I still liked to buy bread would look at me with pity. Sophia's narrative was poisoning my name. I realized silence would no longer protect me. If she wanted a public battle, I would give her one. I arranged a live stream of my own. I remember staring into the camera, my hands steady despite my racing heart. Hello, everyone. My name is Margaret. Many of you have heard my daughter's version of our story. Tonight, Then I laid it bare. I spoke about the years of sacrifice, how I had worked double shifts to pay for her education, covered her wedding, even paid for part of the house she now claimed as hers. I revealed how, after losing my job, she called me a burden and threw me out. I showed receipts, photos, and documents. And then, for the first time publicly, I revealed the inheritance. I was blessed by a woman who believed in me when no one else did. She left me with the means to live freely, and I intend to do just that. My daughter's anger comes not from abandonment, but from the fact that I will no longer fund her choices. That's the truth. The comments flooded in shock, outrage, sympathy. Many turned on Sophia immediately, accusing her of greed and manipulation. Others urged me to cut ties completely. Sophia, furious, doubled down. She posted angry rants, claiming I was lying, that I had stolen money that rightfully belonged to her because she was my child. That was when I decided to take the fight beyond social media. I hired a lawyer. We filed a defamation lawsuit against Sophia for the lies she spread online. We also pursued a restraining order after she began showing up at my new home, banging on the door, shouting insults loud enough for the neighbors to hear. The courtroom became our battlefield. I remember sitting there, my palms sweating as Sophia's lawyer tried to paint me as a bitter old woman seeking revenge. But when my lawyer displayed bank records, receipts of the money I poured into Sophia's life, and clips of her online rants, the tide turned. The judge looked directly at Sophia and said, "This court sees no evidence of neglect from your mother. What we see is a pattern of exploitation and defamation on your part." I almost cried when I heard it. The restraining order was granted. Sophia was ordered to take down her posts and banned from further harassing me online. Still, the damage had already left scars, relationships with extended family fractured, with some siding with Sophia because they couldn't accept the idea of a daughter being in the wrong. But I no longer cared. For once, I had chosen myself. The final straw came when I reclaimed my share of the house I had funded. The lawyers dug through paperwork, uncovering proof that I had made the down payment. After negotiations, I forced Sophia and Adrian to sell. They were left scrambling for a rental, furious and humiliated, while I walked away with a sizable profit. Through it all, I never gloated. I carried myself with dignity, though inside my emotions swung like a pendulum: hurt, anger, vindication, relief. Each night I returned to my townhouse, lit candles, and painted. My canvases filled with colors I hadn't touched in decades, blues that whispered of peace, reds that screamed of betrayal, golds that shimmered with newfound freedom. What Sophia never understood was that money wasn't my true victory. The real triumph was learning to value myself again. But my journey was not finished. A deeper peace still waited for me, far from the noise of lawsuits and city streets. And I was finally ready to seek it. After the court cases ended and the dust finally settled, I felt like I had walked out of a storm into a strange silence. The townhouse by the Melbourne waterfront was beautiful, yes, but the city still carried the taste of bitterness. Every cafe corner whispered of arguments. Every street lamp seemed to throw shadows of memories I wanted to leave behind. That was when I decided to go farther, to search for a place where no one knew my name, where my story wasn't twisted into gossip. I sold the townhouse and bought a lakeside villa in Daylesford, a quiet town with calm waters and trees that blushed red in autumn. The house was old but elegant, with wide verandas and a studio facing the lake. When I first stepped inside, I felt as though the walls sighed in relief, welcoming someone who would fill them not with tension but with life. I hung crisp white curtains, stacked my paints by the window, and let the smell of turpentine and canvas replace the bitterness that had choked me for years. Every morning, I walked barefoot along the dew-soaked grass to the lake's edge. The surface shimmered like liquid silver, ripples dancing with the wind. I would sit on a wooden bench and sketch. Sometimes it was landscapes, sometimes faceless figures emerging from shadows, sometimes bold swirls of colors I couldn't name. My hands remembered what my heart had long buried. I was no longer the factory worker. No longer the abandoned mother. I was simply Margaret, an artist, a woman reclaiming her voice through color and light. The community in Dalesford didn't know my history, and I chose not to tell it to them. I was the quiet woman who painted by the lake, who smiled when greeted at the market, who carried fresh bread under her arm every Saturday. Some evenings, children would peek into my studio, their eyes wide at the canvases. I invited them in, teaching them how to mix paints, how to shade with soft brushes. Their laughter filled the room, and I realized that although I had lost one daughter, I could still share maternal warmth with others. It wasn't long before the local gallery invited me to display my work. At the opening night, I stood in the corner, nervous as people wandered from painting to painting, one canvas. A storm of grays and blues with a solitary figure standing in the rain drew a crowd. A woman touched my arm and whispered, "This feels like grief, but also courage. Was it inspired by your life?" I met her gaze and smiled faintly. Yes, by all of it. Word of my story began to spread, but not the version Sophia had once screamed into cameras. This was different. The community respected me for my resilience, for turning pain into art. Articles were written in local papers, calling me the woman who found light after betrayal. It wasn't fame I sought, but it felt healing to be seen for who I truly was, not the caricature my daughter had drawn of me online. Then, one summer afternoon, I received a letter. Not any mail, not a message. An old-fashioned handwritten note slipped into my mailbox. It was from Sophia. Her words were shaky, angry, yet desperate. "Mom, we've lost everything. Adrian left. The kids ask about you, but I can't give them answers. You sit on millions while your own grandchildren live without. How can you be so cold?" I read it once, then folded it neatly. For a moment, old instincts clawed at me, the urge to rush in, to fix her life as I had always done. But I stopped myself. Love without respect had drained me for decades. I wouldn't step back into that cage. Instead, I wrote a short reply. "Sophia, I will always hope you find peace. But I will not sacrifice my dignity again. When you learn respect, my door may open. Until then, I wish you well." I mailed it the same day and never received a response. Perhaps she tore it to shreds. Perhaps she wept. Perhaps she cursed my name. I'll never know. What I do know is that I finally felt free. Seasons passed. My art began selling for prices I never imagined, not that I needed the money. Collectors admired the raw emotion in every stroke, the way my canvases carried storms and sunlight side by side. The inheritance had freed me financially, but painting freed me spiritually. I had rebuilt myself from ashes. Sometimes, as twilight spread over the lake and the water turned gold, I whispered to Mrs. Lindholm, thanking her for the gift that became my second chance. She had believed in me when no one else had, and through her, I had discovered that I was worth more than anyone had ever told me. To those who ask if I regret adopting Sophia, my answer is complicated. I don't regret giving love, even if it was thrown back at me. Love, even unreturned, shaped me into the woman who now paints with truth, but I do regret losing myself for so many years in sacrifice that was never appreciated. Now I live by a simple creed. I will give, but never at the cost of my soul. I will love, but never in chains. And I will remember that sometimes walking away is the most powerful form of love there is. Love for oneself. As I sit here, brush in hand, watching the last light fade across the lake, I realize my story is no longer about betrayal. It's about rebirth. I lost a daughter's love, but I found my own. And in the quiet of this lakeside town, with colors blooming across my canvas, I am finally home. Moral lesson: true love never demands self-erasure. Choosing peace, dignity, and self-respect over toxic ties is the greatest gift to yourself. Like this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear